Something subtle may already be happening in your body. You stand up from a chair, and for a moment the room feels unsteady. You pause, waiting for your balance to return. Lately, you may notice that you feel more tired than usual. Not sick, just weaker, slower. And maybe, recently, you almost lost your balance. Many people brush these moments aside. They tell themselves it's just part of getting older. But I'd like to invite you to consider a different question. A question that very few people are asking. What if the number you've been told to chase is actually working against you? What if trying to keep your blood pressure perfect is quietly increasing your risk of feeling unsteady, feeling drained, or losing confidence in your body? I want to talk with you today about something that often changes after the age of 70, but is rarely explained clearly. Blood pressure targets. Not the numbers written on a chart, but what those numbers actually mean for an aging body. This is not about extremes. It's not about ignoring your health. And it's not about fear. It's about understanding how the body changes with age and why the same blood pressure reading can mean very different things at different stages of life. Many people have spent decades hearing one simple message: lower is always better. And for younger adults, that idea often makes sense. But later in life, the picture becomes more complex. As we age, our arteries gradually become stiffer. Our nervous system reacts more slowly. Our kidneys process fluids and medications differently. All of this changes how the body responds to pressure. At a certain point, lowering blood pressure too aggressively doesn't always protect the body. Sometimes it can limit blood flow to areas that need it the most. That's something most guidelines don't explain very well. This conversation isn't about chasing ideal numbers. It's about maintaining steady, reliable circulation to the brain, the kidneys, and the heart, without creating new problems along the way. The same blood pressure reading can look reassuring on paper, but feel very different in real life. By the end of this video, I want you to clearly understand a few important things. Why the familiar 120/80 isn't always the most comfortable or safest target for older adults. Why lower pressure can sometimes increase the risk of feeling lightheaded or unsteady. What everyday signals your body may use to tell you that something isn't quite right. And how to have a calmer, more productive conversation with your healthcare provider about what makes sense for you. This isn't about rebellion. It's about balance. And it's about listening to your body, not just the numbers. If you're someone who thinks long-term about staying steady on your feet, keeping your mind clear, and aging with confidence rather than anxiety, this perspective matters. Now, let's talk about what large studies have quietly been showing in adults over 75. Several long-term studies following older adults noticed something unexpected. People whose blood pressure was pushed very low often reported more dizziness, more fatigue, and more difficulty with balance. Meanwhile, many people whose pressure stayed in a moderate range actually felt steadier and more capable in daily life. This doesn't mean higher is better. It means that once the body changes with age, extremes, on either side, can create problems. One reason for this lies in how aging arteries behave. When arteries are more flexible, blood flows easily even at lower pressure. But as stiffness increases, the body may need a bit more pressure to keep blood moving smoothly upward, especially toward the brain. When pressure drops too low, blood flow can momentarily lag behind when you stand or move. That's when people often feel lightheaded or unsure of their footing. There's another important system involved here that most people have never heard of. Your body has built-in sensors that help adjust blood pressure when you change position. When you're younger, these sensors react quickly. With age, their response becomes slower. If blood pressure is already on the low side, standing up can lead to a sudden drop before the body catches up. That moment matters, because balance and confidence depend on steady circulation, not just good intentions. Many older adults describe a frustrating pattern. They're told their blood pressure numbers look excellent, but they don't feel excellent. They feel tired in the morning, they feel hesitant when walking, they feel cautious in situations that used to feel easy. This disconnect between numbers and experience is important. It's information. Your body communicates through how you feel, and when we ignore those signals, we may miss opportunities to adjust things in a safer, more comfortable direction. In the next part, we'll look more closely at how medications, timing, and daily habits interact with blood pressure in later life, and why more treatment isn't always the same as better support. One important piece that often gets overlooked is how medications behave in an aging body. As the years pass, the way your body processes medications slowly changes. The kidneys filter more slowly. The liver breaks substances down at a different pace. This means that a dose that felt gentle and effective years ago can become much stronger over time, even if the prescription never changed. For some people, this leads to pressure dropping lower than intended, especially at certain times of day or night. That's why more medication doesn't always mean better balance. Sometimes it simply means stronger effects than the body needs. Researchers who followed large groups of adults in their late 70s and 80s noticed a pattern. Those whose blood pressure stayed in a moderate range often did better overall than those whose pressure was pushed very low. When pressure dipped too far, people were more likely to feel unsteady, experience sudden drops when standing, or feel mentally drained. On the other hand, when pressure stayed too high for long periods, other risks increased. The safest range was often somewhere in the middle. This idea can feel uncomfortable, especially if you've spent decades being told that lower is always better. But aging changes the equation. One reason this happens involves how the body adjusts to gravity. When you stand up, blood naturally moves downward for a brief moment. A healthy response requires quick adjustments to keep blood flowing to the brain. With age, that adjustment can be slower. If pressure is already low, even a small delay can make you feel lightheaded or unsure on your feet. This experience has a name, but the label isn't what matters. What matters is recognizing that these moments are not random. They're signals. Another factor that deserves attention is nighttime blood pressure. During sleep, pressure naturally drops. This is a normal and healthy pattern. However, when pressure drops too much during sleep, especially if medications are strongest overnight, blood flow to the brain and kidneys can remain low for hours at a time. Over long periods, this may affect how well these organs are supported. That's why the timing of medications can matter just as much as the dose itself. Some people feel better when medications are taken earlier in the day rather than late at night. Others benefit from spreading doses out instead of taking everything at once. These are small adjustments, but they can make a meaningful difference. Kidneys in particular are sensitive to pressure. They rely on steady blood flow to filter properly. When pressure stays too low for extended periods, filtration can become less efficient. As kidney function shifts, managing fluids and medications becomes more complicated, creating a cycle that's harder to break. The brain is another organ that depends heavily on consistent circulation. Even though it makes up a small portion of body weight, it uses a large share of oxygen and nutrients. When blood flow dips repeatedly, people may notice fogginess, slower thinking, or difficulty concentrating. These changes don't happen overnight. They develop gradually, often quietly. That's why paying attention early matters. Now let's talk about side effects, because they're often dismissed or misunderstood. Medications used to manage blood pressure can be very helpful, but they're not neutral. Each type has effects that may become more noticeable with age. Some can increase fatigue. Some can contribute to swelling. Some affect sleep or digestion. Others influence how energized or steady you feel throughout the day. When several medications are combined, these effects can add up. This is why quality of life should always be part of the conversation. Feeling constantly drained, hesitant to move, or mentally dulled is not something to ignore. Those experiences carry just as much weight as the numbers on a monitor. What often helps is stepping back and looking at the whole picture, not just the reading from a single visit, but patterns over time. Checking blood pressure at home gives a clearer view of what's happening day to day, and checking it in different positions, sitting and standing, can reveal drops that a seated reading alone will miss. If you notice that your pressure falls significantly when you stand, that information is valuable. It helps explain symptoms that might otherwise be brushed aside. Feeling lightheaded, feeling unusually tired, feeling weak or unsteady. These are not personal failures. They're messages from your body. In the next part, we'll talk about how to use that information constructively, how to document what you're noticing, how to discuss it calmly and clearly with your doctor, and how daily habits can support steadier blood pressure without extremes. Let's talk about how to turn awareness into something useful. If you're over 75 and your blood pressure is being treated, one of the most helpful things you can do is gather clear, simple information about how your body responds throughout the day. Home monitoring plays an important role here. A single reading in a medical office is just a moment in time. At home, you see patterns. You see how your body behaves when you wake up, after meals, during activity, and in the evening. It doesn't need to be complicated. A reliable automatic cuff, a notebook, and consistency are enough. Another valuable step is checking blood pressure in different positions. Sit quietly for several minutes and take a reading. Then stand up and check again after about 1 minute, and again after a few minutes. If you notice a noticeable drop when standing, especially if it comes with symptoms, that's important information to share. Numbers matter, but how you feel matters just as much. If you're feeling dizzy, unusually tired, weak, foggy, or unsure on your feet, those experiences deserve attention. They're not simply in your head. They're part of how your body communicates. This is where conversations with your doctor become especially important. A productive conversation doesn't need to be confrontational. It can be calm and collaborative. You might say something like, "I've noticed that even though my readings look good, I often feel lightheaded or tired. I've been checking my pressure at home, including when I stand, and I'd like to understand whether my current target makes sense for my age and overall health." A thoughtful provider will listen. They may suggest adjusting timing, spacing medications differently, or reassessing the goal altogether. Good care is individualized. It considers age, strength, kidney function, other medications, and how you live your daily life. Beyond medication, daily habits play a powerful role in how steady your pressure feels. Hydration is one of the most overlooked factors. Many older adults simply don't drink enough fluids. Even mild dehydration can make low pressure feel worse. For most people, steady fluid intake throughout the day supports better balance and circulation. Salt is another area where nuance matters. While excessive salt isn't helpful for everyone, very low intake can contribute to low pressure in some individuals. This doesn't mean adding salt without thought. It means recognizing that less isn't always better for every body. Movement is also key, but the right kind. Gentle strength training helps maintain muscle mass and support circulation. Walking is beneficial, but it's important to listen to your body and move at a pace that feels safe. Standing up slowly, especially after sitting or lying down, gives your system time to adjust. Simple habits like sitting at the edge of the bed for a moment before standing can reduce sudden drops. Some people find that supportive garments, like compression stockings, help prevent blood from pooling in the legs when standing. Others benefit from slightly elevating the head of the bed, which may reduce large drops overnight. These aren't dramatic changes. They're practical adjustments that support steadier circulation. Medication timing can also make a difference. If you're taking several medications at once, spacing them throughout the day may help avoid sharp drops. If nighttime lows are an issue, shifting doses earlier can sometimes improve how you feel in the morning. These are conversations to have with your doctor, not changes to make on your own. It's also worth remembering that some non-prescription products can influence blood pressure. Certain pain relievers, cold remedies, and supplements can raise or lower pressure. When combined with prescriptions, their effects may be stronger than expected. Keeping a full list of everything you take, prescriptions, supplements, and over-the-counter products, helps prevent surprises. Now, let's talk briefly about fear, because it plays a big role in how people approach blood pressure. Many people have been taught to be deeply afraid of higher numbers. That concern didn't come from nowhere. Uncontrolled pressure over time can cause real harm, but fear can also push decisions toward extremes. Managing blood pressure doesn't have to mean living in constant anxiety. It can mean monitoring, adjusting thoughtfully, and aiming for steadiness rather than perfection. In the next part, we'll look at how goals can differ depending on age, strength, and priorities, and why there isn't a single right number that fits everyone. Blood pressure goals change depending on the person standing behind the numbers. Age matters, but it's not the only factor. Overall strength matters. Daily activity matters. Past health history matters. And just as importantly, personal priorities matter. Two people can be the same age and need very different approaches. One person may be energetic, active, and focused on preventing long-term cardiovascular problems. Another may be more vulnerable to dizziness, unsteadiness, or fatigue, and focused on staying independent and confident in daily life. Both perspectives are valid. This is where the idea of one perfect number begins to fall apart. For some older adults, a slightly lower blood pressure feels fine and causes no symptoms. For others, that same number feels draining and destabilizing. Frailty plays an important role here. Frailty isn't just about age. It reflects muscle strength, energy level, walking speed, and overall resilience. A more fragile body is often less tolerant of low pressure and sudden shifts. A more robust body may handle them better. That's why individualized targets make sense. If pressure is consistently very high, that carries risks that should be addressed. But if pressure is moderately elevated and the person feels steady, alert, and independent, the balance of risks and benefits may look very different. This is not about ignoring problems. It's about choosing the safest middle ground for your situation. If you suspect your pressure may be running too low for your body, the first step is not to make sudden changes. The first step is observation. Track your readings over time. Note how you feel. Notice patterns. Then bring that information into a focused conversation with your doctor. Ask whether your current target still fits your age, strength, and daily life. Ask whether adjustments might improve steadiness or energy. Ask whether timing or dosage could be reconsidered. You deserve to be part of these decisions. If you ever feel dismissed or unheard, it's reasonable to seek another perspective. Some providers specialize in caring for older adults and are especially attuned to these nuances. Blood pressure also fluctuates naturally throughout the day. It tends to be lower during sleep and higher in the morning. It rises with stress, pain, or activity, and falls with rest. That's why repeated home measurements give a clearer picture than a single reading taken in a stressful environment. Mental and emotional health also influence blood pressure more than many people realize. Chronic stress keeps the nervous system activated. Anxiety can cause spikes. Low mood can affect energy and circulation. Supporting emotional well-being is part of supporting physical balance. Sleep matters as well. Poor sleep disrupts regulation and raises strain on the body. If sleep is frequently unrefreshing, addressing it may improve blood pressure and overall resilience. Nutrition doesn't need to be perfect to be supportive. Regular meals, adequate hydration, fruits and vegetables, and avoiding extremes go a long way. Consistency matters more than rigid rules. Alcohol and caffeine affect people differently. Moderation and awareness are usually more helpful than strict elimination. As we bring all of this together, one theme keeps returning. Blood pressure management in later life is not just about numbers. It's about preserving stability, clarity, and independence. Sometimes that means accepting a number that's slightly higher than what you were taught years ago. Sometimes it means fewer medications, not more. Sometimes it means trusting how you feel as much as what the monitor shows. There is no single right answer that applies to everyone. The best approach is the one that supports your goals, your safety, and your quality of life. You are not a chart. You are a person with a history, a body that has adapted over time, and a life you want to continue living with confidence. If you take one thing away from this conversation, let it be this: lower is not always better. Comfort and stability matter. Symptoms are meaningful, and thoughtful, individualized care is worth advocating for. If this perspective helped you see blood pressure in a clearer, calmer way, I'd be glad to hear about it. You can reflect on what stood out to you, or what questions you're still thinking about. And if you'd like more grounded, practical guidance on aging well, circulation, daily habits, and long-term balance, You can explore the additional resources linked below whenever it feels right for you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, move gently, and stay attentive to what your body is telling you. We'll continue this conversation next time.